And on Sports Central, we go for our 2022 college football predictions for the Utah Utes, team that went 10-4 overall in the 2021 season. Won the Pac-12 overall. Outstanding season for Utah. But how will this team be in 2022? Will this team be a potential dark horse national contender in the 2022 season? That's what we go over here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predicting their schedule game by game in this video, starting out with your team trends. Utah 10-4 last season. This team, I expected them to be good last season, but maybe not quite as good as they were. I mean, 10-4 and winning the Pac-12 was, that's an outstanding season. And this team was 4-3 in their first 7 games. So, 4-3 in the first 7 didn't really look like this team was going to be as big or as relevant as they were at the end of the season. But they were 6-1 in their last 7 games. They went on a winning streak there and beat some good opponents and made it to the Rose Bowl. They beat USC on October 9th, 42-26 on the road. Beat Arizona State, number 18 team in the nation at the time, 35-21. Beat UCLA by 20, 44-24. That was a huge win. And, of course, they were Oregon's kryptonite this past season. They beat Oregon twice. They beat them in the regular season when Oregon was ranked number 3 in the nation. Looked like Oregon was going to be headed to the Rose Bowl. They beat them in the regular season 38-7 and destroyed them again for the Pac-12 title, 38-10. So, kind of interesting how those 2 games against Oregon were pretty similar score-wise. Utah scoring 38 in both and dominating the Ducks overall. Made it to the Rose Bowl, in which, that Rose Bowl game between Utah and Ohio State was one of the best games of the season, potentially even the best. That was a wild game. Ohio State ended up winning it by 3, but it was an incredible fight by Utah, keeping it close. 45-48 was the final score. So definitely a memorable season for Utah. This team has been relevant multiple times in the past few years. So going into 2022, though, let me tell you, this is a team that should be taken seriously going into next season. And if everything goes right, the returning production, Cameron Rising's coming back, starting quarterback from last season. He performed very well, putting up 2,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 picks, didn't turn over the ball very much, 64% completion rate as well. So, he's got room to improve, and he definitely has got some of the most potential. I feel like he's got a very high ceiling. He put up 500 rush yards as well as 6 touchdowns on the ground. So, Cameron Rising, this is a guy to keep an eye on. And, this offense in general, Tavion Thomas is coming back. He put up over 1,100 yards last season, 21 touchdowns. TJ Pledger won't be back. He put up 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. But at least you got Thomas coming back, who was outstanding last season. 21 rush yards, or 21 rushing touchdowns last season, which is outstanding. Brant Keith, Keithy, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, he's coming back. The top tight end, the top in receiving on this team, put up 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. And Kincaid, the second in receiving, is coming back as well. So this team had 2 tight ends as their top 2 receivers last season. Their top wideout and third in receiving, Britton Covey. They do lose him. He is gone. So that could definitely be a significant loss. But once again, you do have your top 2 in receiving still coming back. So that's what does matter. Devon Bailey is returning, the second wideout for this team. Last season he put up 380 yards and a touchdown. So not too concerned about the receiving core and in the receiving game there, considering you got 3 of your top 4 in receiving from last season coming back. You lose 1 on the offensive line, 2 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, 1 in the secondary. So defensively, there are 4 starters that are leaving, but that's not too concerning at all, honestly. That's pretty average for losing players. 3 to 4 starters is pretty average. So, Utah, this is a team that, returning production-wise, and considering this team was 10-4 and Pac-12 champion last season, if everything goes right, this team, all signs point to this team being a national contender in the 2022 season. The starting quarterback coming back, most of the key players coming back. If everything goes right here, this team should be a national contender this upcoming season. And I think that's kind of flying under the radar here. I feel like this is a team that's kind of being slept on a bit this offseason. I feel like Utah's a team that, they're ranked in most to all preseason polls that I've seen. But I feel like Utah's a team to really, once again, if everything goes right, if this team doesn't turn out to be a bust, all signs point to this team being a national contender in this season. Pac-12 champions once again in 2022. I'd say this team is probably my favorite to win the Pac-12 title. Once again, they should. They should win the Pac-12 title. Oregon has got, Oregon's probably the other team that comes to mind that could win the title. But they've got multiple significant changes which could have an impact. So, I mean, this team, are they a potential dark horse national contender? I think so. I feel like this is a team that, I mean, there are some circumstances where some surprise teams from the previous season return a lot of players and turn out to bust. The next season it's just a one-year thing, but I don't know if this is a one-year thing for Utah in 2021, just being good in that season. I feel like this is a team that's progressively becoming more and more relevant. And, I mean, with the return production that they have going into 2022, things look really good for them right now. Transfer portal and recruiting going into next season. Linebacker Bates coming in from Florida. So you're adding several players from the transfer portal. Logan Kendall, tight ends, coming in from Idaho. You got Charlie Brewer, who took off to Liberty. He came in for the 2021 season, but didn't really play too much because Cameron Rising turned out to be the better player. Castelli, quarterback, he's also transferring out. You got an offensive tackle who's off, and another offensive lineman who's off to San Jose State. Landon Morris, receiver, who's coming in from Syracuse. So, and of course, Xavier Carlton, defensive lineman, is off to Cal. Recruiting-wise, looks pretty good. 30th in the nation, 4th in the Pac-12. I mean, nothing too notable, but at the same time, I mean, 4th in the conference isn't bad at all. They got 3 4-stars coming in and then 14 3-stars. So recruiting doesn't look terrible. Transfer portal, nothing too concerning there either. But that said, let's look at the schedule now for Utah going into next season. The thing is about this team here, I mean, we've gone over the returning production, and once again, I feel like this team is prime for a national title run. I mean, I don't know if they're going to win the national title, but a college football playoff run, at least, I think is very much within reason for this team. I mean, this team could very much be a national contender this upcoming season, but the schedule is somewhat difficult for this team. Probably one of the tougher schedules in the Pac-12, if not the toughest. You start off the season against Florida, but the thing is, I mean, Florida, the Gators probably won't be quite, I mean, they're not going to be terribly good next season. I could see them in the 6 to 8 win range, which, I mean, it's not terrible, but like I don't expect them to be an SEC contender. But you're playing them on the road in an unfamiliar location, and Florida is a tough place to play. So, I mean, that's kind of my main concern with Utah going there is, and especially in week 1, you're going on the road. So probably not the most favorable week 1 matchup there, but I mean, if you can get a win there, that'd be huge. You got Southern Utah coming to town on the 10th. You got San Diego State on the 17th. I mean, San Diego State, that's not a pushover game. Then you got Arizona State on the road on the 24th. Oregon State comes to town on October 1st. Then you got UCLA on the road, USC at home. That's going to be a huge game against USC. You got them at home. You got Washington State on the road after your bye. Then you got Arizona at home on the 5th of November. You got Stanford at home, Oregon on the road, and then Colorado on the road to finish out the season. So, I mean, it's a somewhat difficult schedule. You got to play on the road at Oregon. I mean, of course, USC is going to be a huge game, and Florida, your non-conference games, Florida, San Diego State, both could be challenging matchups. But looking at September, you got Florida on the road. Once again, that's a huge game, I think, in week 1. I mean, that's going to be a crucial game there. That's going to set the tone for the season, I think, for Utah. You lose that game on the road in Gainesville, you probably, I mean, your record is going to be reduced, I think, by a couple of wins. I mean, that's a huge game in week 1, and I mean, week 1 games are huge, and so for Utah to go on the road in week 1 and once again an unfavorable location, tough place to play, that could be a tricky game there. But I will favor Utah there in what's going to be a very tough to predict game there between Utah and Florida. Then you got Southern Utah, easy win there. San Diego State, I'm going to put that game in yellow, but I definitely want to favor Utah there. Yeah, San Diego State, I don't think they'll be very good next season, but potentially that could be a challenging game. Arizona State on the road, that's a road game. Arizona State, I feel like is in a rebuilding phase, so I mean, I don't expect too many big things out of them, but I'll favor Utah there. So 4-0 heading into October. If you're still undefeated heading into October, I think you're in really good shape for an excellent season. And then in October, you got Oregon State. I'm going to put that as an easy win. Oregon State could potentially be decent next season, but I do think Utah wins that game by 2 touchdowns or more. UCLA on the road. Now, UCLA is going to be a tricky game. I think, honestly, that's the most challenging one of October for Utah. I could see UCLA in the 7 to 9 win range. So the Bruins going on the road there, potentially a game that kind of goes under the radar. I mean, don't want to sleep on UCLA in that game. I think that's going to be a close one. Could easily go either way, but I'll favor Utah there. USC at home, huge matchup. I could see USC getting 8 to 10 wins this upcoming season. I mean, Caleb Williams going in. They got Lincoln Riley. They got several other transfers coming in. Travis Dye's another big name. USC's offense is really, I think they're going to come around this upcoming season, and their defense is looking pretty good going to next season. So USC potentially could be good this upcoming season. That'll be a huge game there. Utah's got it at home. I think they win that game in a close one. Washington State, also a close one, but I'll favor Utah there. So you're 8-0 heading into November. So I've got this team undefeated for a long time. But once again, I'll go back to that Florida game in a second here. But looking at November, Arizona, easy win. Stanford, easy win as well. And then you got Oregon on the road. Now, Utah last season was Oregon's kryptonite. Utah just dominated them twice. Once in November and once in the Pac-12 title game. But I think Oregon being at home in that game, they'll be ready to go. They're going to want to avenge those losses last season, and I feel like they do so in a close game on the road. It's a tough place to play, and I feel like Oregon barely gets the win there. But Utah wins that game. You go into Boulder still 11-0. You win that game against Colorado. You're undefeated heading into the Pac-12 title game. Utah, this sets up pretty well for them to potentially get to the college football playoff if that's the case. But obviously Pac-12 teams, you got to be undefeated more than likely. You got to be an undefeated Pac-12 champion if you want to get into the college football playoff. That's just how it is. And so for Utah, the pressure's on. You can't really slip up anywhere. But, there's a very good chance. If any team in the Pac-12 is going to make the college football playoff this season, it will be Utah, if you ask me. But once again, going back to that Florida game, though. That Florida game, I just want to mention, that's a very crucial game, if you ask me. I feel like if you lose that Florida game, I think Utah's record is potentially 8-4, 9-3, because it sets the tone once again for this season. Florida is going to be I feel like a decent team. I don't know if, they're not going to be great, but going on the road there could be a challenge. And obviously you got San Diego State, another tough non-conference game. So it's a tougher schedule, but I feel like this team handles it pretty well. It gets up to 11-1. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Utah, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.